fully in the swing of this Saturday morning trading session. Now that the USA is starting to wake up at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time during the week, but we give some grace to get into the trading swing. So we always say 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, maybe 8 o'clock to give everybody a little swing into the flow. But what we're seeing right now is a nice little recovery. Nothing that can confirm that we've reversed, nothing that invalidates what could be bear flags out there. But what we're starting to see here is a little bit of positive momentum, and we held some very strong support areas, not just overnight, but also in the, let's just call it the Euro hours. And then when the US came back in and seen that everything kind of stabilized, instead of selling it off immediately here, it's been able to, after a small sell-off in the morning, it's been able to pretty much hold steady here. What I'm seeing across the market is something I like. People are becoming very fearful again. They're exiting. They're not reinvesting. And retail, to a sense, is starting to be, oh, well, you know, there's nothing that can happen here but the complete straight down. Micro, they were, you know, it's starting to look bad, bear flags, blah, 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 without the overall look of the macro. And I can tell you from a macro perspective, you know, I haven't seen a setup this nice since 2017. So unless this completely invalidates, these patterns completely break down, which would invalidate an alt season, and crypto would just be in the shitter. Like that's the honest to God truth with the setups right now. These are pointing in the macro sense on a lot of these tokens that are IoT and IS. They're pointing at 10x's plus. And I think XRP is the gatekeeper of what's coming with the moves, because it's already made that move. And then it's going to continue to make more, you know, more of a move, but it's going to come at the expense where some of them are making maybe 5 to 6 times more of what XRP is going to make from here if you just buy it in right now. Now, if you've been in since, you know, 35, 40, 50 cents, you know, you're going to reap the rewards if it gets to 6, 5. I mean, that's a cycle for me is $5.39 regardless of what happens. Even if we can't power through and hit that 639 or 669 and extend out to, my target before this cycle started when we were in the mid 30s was $5.49 or $5.39, one of the two. I have it on here. I've never changed it. So until this doesn't happen, or until we completely break down, I'm still looking at inverse head and shoulders. I'm looking at a lot of ability to shake out yourselves. Institutions aren't shaking you out, so we're going to stop that narrative. The institution doesn't have enough care capacity to give a rat's ass about shaking you out. All they care about is shaking that liquidity. And what that, the shaking can retail out, or shaking out, I'm going to explain this a little bit deeper once I show you this, because I don't want to get caught in between two thoughts. So first, when we started this cycle, where the hell is this chart? I keep skipping the one. Got so many damn, here it is. So we had 549 and 638. So this was my technical targets before it started. And we were building off of this 7-year descending pattern. Almost started forming like a wedge-ish type, because look how small it got at the end. And it broke out almost until the apex. It was basically to max capacity. It was November, December of 24 was when this had to, and we were watching this for a long time since the rejection here. That's how we knew to buy the uptrend on 34 cents. We did buy it at 28, but sold it up here on this first initial rally. And then we bought it back when it came back down and heard quantitative easing. It was such a spectacular little bounce. Oh, man. Anyhow, that same logic is applied to more than just XRP, but that's the point here. XRP, if we knew how it was going to run out of the beginning stages, why are we fearing the end part of this run? We've already come up so far. And in the micro, I just posed a question, XRP bullish development in micro question mark. Because that's a lot of the, you know, that's a lot of what we would be looking at right now. Is there any kind of development here? Or is the micro still looking like it's going to come down here and end up filling out what could be a bear flag? Now, We have uncertainty because there is a double bottom here for sure. We had the wick exhaustion here in the 4-hourly, came back down and perfectly placed it here. Now we've come up a little bit, bearish cross in the 4-hourly, still not a great sign. But it's going to all come in the next couple of hours. If this can bounce out of here, it would leave a lot more bullish thesis here. And then if you invalidate the drop, you know, you'd find yourself coming all the way back up to the top around 333. But just remember, if it drops out, 285 is that bear flag. I'll get that out of the way so it's easier to see. And then in the overall pattern, you know, we are still looking hot. Even in the micro, that micro inverse head and shoulders doesn't look horrible right now. It actually formed very nicely on that drop. We needed it to form, you know, we needed that drop to form this. Let's see. Clayton, welcome in. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friend. Let's see. Crazy Paul, good morning, and thanks for being in. I gotta close this one side because it is all over my screen. I wanted you guys to see outside, but I guess you're not even really seeing outside, are you? Because it's so bright. So bright. Going to the gym today, it was already so damn humid when I went there, and it was on like 8:30. Let's see. Cowabunga, welcoming Crazy Paul, Ricci Farms, Joseph Euler. Thank you so much for being in Tom's Arm for over 6+ months with the XP Predictor. Ricci, read the prompt. Read the prompt in Telegram. You see that big long message that shows up from Rose? Read it. The number one issue we have, and I'm not making fun of you, or I'm using you as an example right now. With a lot of things that I do, the number one issue we have is reading comprehension. Not because we can't read, but because we actually don't pay attention to what's in front of us. There's a prompt that comes up right when you join my Telegram. A big, long prompt. If you don't do what it says, you can't comment. The reason we do that is because, you know, it's kind of like a here's your sign moment. You got to read right when you walk in the door. Otherwise, you're not going to have the ability to do anything. It's the truth. But define, if you're watching, can you help him? Or can somebody help him? There's a lot of stuff. You have to accept our terms. That you're not going to do all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. It's one of our ways to circumvent spamming. But as you see, if somebody doesn't comment, they can always go to the list of people and still try to spam them that way. And that's what ends up happening. So it's a double-edged sword. You know? But you got to go through the prompt to reach is the best I can put. And I so appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you commenting in there. I like getting to know people inside that Telegram. It's an unbelievable thing. Trading with J-Ride, thank you so much for the $10 donation and also being in Tom's Army for over, what is this? Whoops. Over 3 years with the XRP Diamond Hands badge. Sorry, like I said, my screen is a little... I'm just going to shut this. I know we want to see the out... Oh, much better. Now I can at least see. Hey, Tom, I know we don't do meme coins, but could you do me a favor and give a TA on Bonk? I could. I'm still a bit concerned about these bear flags that are set up, but I was weak last night because Gala, I have a big thing on there that says buy. I circled where it has the inverse right shoulder if it came down, and I even put an arrow that says buy if it comes into this circle. And the pricing came into that circle, so I got finessed out of money last night, and I bought a spot position in Gala because of my own damn past writings. So I'm not mad about it. And like I talked about the other day with BAN, I was happy with the drop because I went over 10,000 tokens in BAN, and of course it would be the one to be pushing up right now, making me feel good. But Gala, I'll show you it in a sec, but BAN right now is one of the early outliers that's trying to invalidate this death cross. BAN gets out of here because we have these inverse head and shoulders. That's what I'm saying in the micro. I'm not convinced that this is just going to happen. And if it does, then it would have to try to create something else. And then it would probably come down to 48. But with what we've created, you've already got the inverse head and shoulders. Now this inverse right shoulder is pulling up. If this happens, this isn't just going to be on BAN. This is going to start to form universally. So with Gala, big circle, buy zone. It came underneath that area, but it formed inside the circle for the inverse right shoulder because I put a line across and circled it below. I didn't know which area it was going to do. So look, I look smart, but really I had a big wide gap of like, there was a big gap after it formed this. I did it after it came up here and started bouncing around. And then I measured it from the side. So I ended up buying a position down here when it did this. I almost did it in copy trade secretly overnight, but then I decided not to even look if Gala was on the list because I didn't want people to wake up to something that they weren't supportive of. So anyhow, but I mean, that's another one, just like Band. It formed that inverse right shoulder, and now it formed that double bottom. It's pushing up. If this is the case, we've got some rather large movement coming here. And this was just a beautiful, beautiful liquidity drop, which is what we're hoping for. Especially with options yesterday, expiring with Bitcoin and Ethereum. Remember, Ethereum still has, at $4,872, there was over $2 billion of liquidation up there. I don't know the updated number today after the little bit of correction yesterday, but that's going to be an ever-growing number of shorts that are going to be taken out. Some are going to close the position as they continue to rally, but some aren't. You know, some will let it ride. And then because they don't have as much as they could have had before that, they're just going to let it keep riding until it gets back up to their number, and then eventually they'll probably get liquidated. Bonk. I haven't looked at this token in a very, very long time. That's not a good chart. I think there's a bigger chart. It has more info. Yeah, oh, there it is. I mean, the one thing about alt season this time around, see, I don't know enough about Bonk to know if it's a legit meme token or if it's got some even basic utility in the next chapter. Even a meme token with basic utility can still survive even if it's a meme token. But if it has zero utility and it's just the basis of it is some dickhead created a token because they knew what they were doing and then they just rug pull it with nothing, well, then it's a problem. But if it's something, a project that has some utility at least, even if it's considered a meme, technically, would an XRP healthcare be considered a meme token in the AI, or I mean in the AI medical field, because it's technically not something that's done? They're innovators, so isn't that technically going to be a meme token to most? You know, so I mean, there's different ways that we can categorize. I don't know, is this a true meme token, or is this, if it's a true meme token, I wouldn't even be buying it. Because you've got the, well, then again, I can't just say that, because on a setup like that, let's just say it plays out and you got inverse left shoulder. And then we'll say this is one big inverse head, okay? Instead of like, even though you have a micro inverse right shoulder. What if we just said left shoulder, wide head, rounding to a shoulder here. And if it does play around and round, I mean, you're going to have a nice measurement. Then it's going to be even a nicer measurement. And then when you start to break this out, you're going to have a nicer measurement. I mean, these are the ones that if they do rally, and see, I don't know enough about it, but these are the ones that can rally. I mean, I know what Bonk is, but I've never had the desire to even look into it. I mean, you start talking about this, and you start talking about some pretty big movement here. But I mean, are you going to, if it is truly a meme token, the question is, would you rather put the money in it on an inverse head and shoulder on a meme that you don't know what it's going to do long term? Or that you're, unless you know something and you like it, I don't know. I'm specifically staying out of meme. I'm not going into the meme sector. In a sense, like I think this chapter is going to be written in the IoT, ISO, and yeah, the RWA if you find the right one, like Epic, which, you know, and that's about all I can say on that trading with J-Ride, because I don't know anything deeper than what I can see on a chart because I've never looked deeper enough into it. But like Epic, we had a perfect back test here, and again, I mean 100% hit it on the absolute dick. And we even marked that out. Instead, if it holds that, that's where the parabolicness happens if it doesn't break down. Again, watching other things, and I don't even pay attention to that structure setup. And look, this isn't the first one that's showing this as the inverse right shoulder needing to come down. This is the time I really kicked myself because I had that set up perfectly. Just like on Gala, I have had it set up if it would hold Now we need to see if they hold, but that's a great sign. That's a great sign that some of them, and that's only got 30 million tokens. Like that's, and Ripple's invested in the, you know, they invested in the project. Epic is like, that's the real world asset right there. That's the one that's trying to create a whole universal thing and make it viable so that institutions, corporations, and people can move money through real world assets on the fly. And Epic is doing it. And man, oh man, that's what I mean. There's so much stuff that I pay attention to that sometimes I miss it. And that's why I say don't just base it off of what I do, because that was there for us. And I'm pissed now. Because it actually did exactly where the level was to buy it. I mean, exactly. When it had the artificial move up, that was all we had to do is wait for that and just take a hold. Take a shot. And then if it invalidated by coming through, so literally, you could have bought it at 172 with the window at 176 to jump out. It was so easy. That was such, oh. Now you look at it across the board, and like in the title I said, this cycle will be an ISO and IoT alts, not Bitcoin. It's a trap, because I truly believe Bitcoin is the trap here. Especially to the new money. The new money's pouring into Bitcoin. You know, retail that is. They for whatever reason like Bitcoin. And I think we still got one more push up here. I see the bear flags, but it almost seems like it was. The funny thing is that they either created the inverse right shoulders or back tested the breakout in a big way and are trying to validate this. Like even Bitcoin came back and validated that small breakout on the back test there again. So, I mean, if it breaks down, I put a couple scenarios there. But it just, it's with the way the options expired on Friday, this could have all been built on a false premise. So that's why we have to see how this plays out this weekend, because there is a real scenario here that drop that formed what looks like bear flags can just be liquidity from the options expiring that forced that drop. And now it forces a wider turn of bearishness on the onset, at least the way it looks. So I'm gonna love to see what happens here. Like Zill fought like a champ at 1080 to not fall farther. It didn't come down to 1026, but it came down to 1080 and it held like a champ. And now we're gonna try to invalidate that section here and push on our merry way and revalidate the golden cross. A great sign here would be to get on top of 1190 and have that golden cross back in play. Nothing's invalidated. Nowhere was anything invalidated. Like this could turn into a majestic opportunity. For some, it already has, depending on what they are buying or, you know, adding and whatever. Let's continue with the comments. Big Dog, Donald Trump, and thanks for being in Tom's Arm for 3+ months with the XRP Meteor. Donald Trump Jr. dissed RLUSD on national TV and pushed their own state. Of course they did. I told you this was all a bunch of bullshit the moment Trump got into office when he was pushing the Trump token, and he fucked us. Because he flipped what he was talking about, and then he put his own independent wealth into it, which is exactly what I said would happen. But I don't want to go there, because I'm going to get too many of the right or too many of the left panties in a bunch. And I'm not a political person. I only talk about how it affects my own positioning in economics. I don't really care what, you know... To be honest, I don't care what Nancy and, you know, Bob and, you know, the soft generation thinks here, the ones who are in their feelings, because it's the truth. I've said it since it started. That's just what's going on. So who cares what Donald Trump Jr. says about RLUSD? They're going to push their agenda. That's what always happens in politics. So, you know, me personally, I don't think anybody with that kind of power should be able to invest the way they do or push their own tokens. I think that should be illegal. That's no different than if I tried to push XRP Future Millionaire token and rug pulled all of you and then I get thrown in jail, right? Why is it any different? Have a whole bunch of people buy rug pull crypto. Doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. That's where the USA and the rest of the world is so fucking backwards. Everybody cares about the politicians when you should really be caring about what's being said. If Biden said the same thing, what would you be saying if you're on the right or if you're on the left? If Biden, you know, if you don't agree with Trump but Biden was doing it, you probably would agree. If you don't agree with Trump but Biden, or you agree with Trump and Biden was doing it, you wouldn't agree. It's the dumbest shit. Just change the faces and your opinion would flip instantly. Change whether they're red or blue. It's the same thing. That's all a farce. That's all to keep you trapped in your own mind. I'm a victim. I can't do it. No, you can do it, and you're a winner. You are very much not a victim. Racism doesn't exist in the USA like they say. If it did, you wouldn't have freedoms all around. Yes, there's different classifications, but if you're trash, you're trash. Even if you're white or black, it doesn't matter. If you're a trashy person and you do trashy things, your next bloodline, your next part down your generation is going to have trashy circumstances. If you work hard, even if you're born in the trash, because I was born with not even, we didn't have pot to piss in. But now T, my son, has a better generation because I worked my ass off. My dad worked his ass off. And now we've been able to build something more. What's wrong? Oh. Is he mad? At me? Poo-poos? But yeah, no, so hold on. What's wrong, Julie? Rash, did you say? Alright, let's see. So far, I mean, we're rounding nicely right now to start this morning. I just don't want to further upset my son. Hold on, guys. I'll be right back. Buddy? Okay, sorry about that. Sometimes, you know how it goes, parents. I don't remember if I did the intro or not. I'll just do it again if I did. Good morning. 11:28 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Saturday, August 16th, 2025. I'm XRP Future Millionaire, and I reside in the great state of Michigan. So we continue to wait out to see what happens during this weekend. A very thinly traded weekend. But we look to see if a direction is formed, whether it's to the down or if we have a majestic correction here. As in a lot of cases, and I'd like to show V-Chain real quick, is another perfect example. We came down and created this inverse right part of the shoulder here. And if this pattern is set up now, I mean, yes, the optics of that could be a bear flag are there. I acknowledge this more than anybody. I've been talking about it just in case it happens. But if this holds, you know, you're not going to get the bear flag drop. This is immediately going to reverse up, and then you're going to bounce out, probably back test, and then it's going to be majestic because then you're going to have the wider one play out. Because this is an inverse right shoulder with an inverse head and shoulders within the inverse right shoulder. Doesn't get much more bullish than that on an inverse head and shoulders. Now we actually form the micro inverse right shoulder as well, which to me is a pretty incredible thing. This is the one as a community we're building in together, and we'll see what happens if we get a majestic drop and we can build more. I have every intention of making the most of this. So, but at the same time, I'm optimistic that we may, even if we haven't bottomed, we're close. So maybe we do come down to the yellow line here and have completed a little bit, but I don't know. We're getting to a point now where we're creating these formations very nicely. So I could definitely see a volatile swing when most are looking farther down, but I'm still cautiously optimistic. I still have it in the back of my head. You have your capital there. You have extra money on the side, just so if it does do something like this and you want to continue to get longer before alt season, that's the plan. Because if alt season is missed here, well, you know, it's gonna be a pretty big crypto winter for a while if this doesn't pan out. I've not seen patterns like this since 2017. After many, many years of consolidation, XRP, after finally 7 years, was able to go from that 30, 40, 50 cent range in consolidation. And we finally broke out of that range, you know, in November. And now we're sitting above $3. And now you hear the same skepticism as when it was at 35 cents, why you shouldn't buy it, why it's a piece of crap at $3.10. It's like, no, I think those people are saying it's crap because they wish they would have dropped $3,000 at 30 cents. So they would have 31,000 now. You know, that's the truth. Now, I acknowledge that XRP is not the buy here. I don't believe it is. I think it takes too much money to move it from $3.10. So a new investor is going to get lured in to what the psychological warfare says to do. Buy Bitcoin, buy XRP. That's all you hear. Ethereum as well. But Ethereum at least has, I think, a little bit of upside here. But still, as to where the other altcoins are, you're not going to make anything on Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP in comparison to some of the alts. This is a microcosm. See how XRP is up 9.93%? Just put it in perspective. Maybe one day it's up 9-10% while you have 40, 50, 60% movement in a lot of the alts. But it takes so much to move XRP. Now, that 10% is going to be like a 1x for us, so we're going to be happy from our initial buy-in. But for somebody who just buys it at $3.10, I'm not bashing on XRP. I love XRP. It's helped transcend my portfolio into what it is now in crypto. Every single token I have now is because of XRP. Because I played the cycle right in 21 and I was able to build into it in 23. And I was able to unload 75% or all my altcoins in January. And I was able to reinvest along the way after 60 to 70% corrections after that. And now I'm set up in a spot where if this drops again, I'll put a little bit more of my side money in that's sitting on the exchange. Or if it's ready to make the move now, I'm going to sit back and finally reap the rewards of 4.5 years of work to try to get into a position to where this alt season, because I don't know if this is the alt season when it happens, and it's going to be the last of a majestic push, because with regulations in 28, unfortunately, it's 4 years sooner than my 28 to 32 max window. And when Trump gets out of office, we've got a problem, because that's when they're going to put in all this implementation. They don't usually do it on the sitting president. They try to do it with the next one, because now the next one will run and say, oh, are you sick of all this BS in crypto with all the rich getting richer, and you've seen what Trump did in his last 4 years? It was all for the big guy. The little guy couldn't even sniff it. They're going to say, we're here to regulate, and we've already got it on the books. We were just waiting until 28, and this is X, Y, and Z. Congratulations, you just turned into the stock market. Not interested. I only like 2 segments of the stock market right now. Mining stocks and emerging market mutual funds. That's it. Other than that, they can keep it all. Just like crypto, after a while, they're going to be able to keep it all. I'm only going to like X, Y, and Z, and I couldn't even give a rat's ass about W, Z, and B, so to say. You know, and that's what we're getting. That's why I want to capitalize on these cycles before it's too late. I've been saying this since 21. There's going to come a time, I'll still be here every day, but there's going to come a time when the capital is not going to be flowing through this of my own the way it is now. I'm taking advantage of it now for the alt season, in my opinion. I don't know if it's actually going to materialize here in 26 or 25, but we are going to have the alt season where everything starts to transfer, just like we did in the dot-com bubble when everybody thought they were making a good move. Everybody watched it go parabolic. And then right when it got towards the top of the step, all retail was like, you know what? I've been hesitant for so long. I'm going to buy it now. You can't lose. And then they start pushing that narrative. Hey, look how great this fucking technology is. Look how great. And then all of a sudden, like in the dot-com bubble, it topples over by 95%. The ones who were in from the very beginning just sat there and said, meh, I cashed out some at the top. I'm just going to buy now that it's down 95%. Or I cashed out it all. Or I got dividends reinvested. And now they sat there again while all of retail got smoked and liquidated. And now they have no money to even invest. They reinvest and they ride it all the way back up because they know the melt-up theory. When you have a big dump like that, eventually you're going to come back up and at least tap it. Unless you go to zero and it's a piece of shit. You know, and that's what happened to some of them in the dot-com. Some of them just went away. Just like in crypto, some of them went away. They will go away. They'll continue to be delisted off of exchanges for no rhyme or reason. That's in essence a token going away. If BITUNIX delists a token, that's a catastrophic hit to a token. Catastrophic. It's a no KYC exchange, which means anybody, anywhere can technically circumvent to get on. Even if they have to do a VPN, because there is no further verification, that token is losing out on an immense amount of capitalization. So I have that same fear. We see VeChain at 20 or 2.4 cents. Once it gets up to 10, 11 cents, people are going to start to look at it and say, hey, okay, only at 10 cents, this is cheap as shit. And then they're going to get that double up to 20, and they're going to say, man, I made 1x. And we're going to be sitting here and saying, yeah, you made 1x, but you should have made 8. But you waited. You know, you can say that across the board. You'll see that with XDC. The moment it breaks up past 15 and it starts pushing 20, 30, 40, because it will. It's only a matter of time. Then you'll see people start buying it. Just like HBAR, I tried to convince people to buy it in 23 and FOMO Friday and Winning Wednesdays. And I dedicated $50 a week for our community that we were doing. Because I knew everybody could afford $50 a week. And I said, if you couldn't, I'm sorry, go collect some cans. It's possible. Go get a part-time job after work for 2 hours a day. And we did that. And then it went from 5.2 all the way up to like 40 something. And now it's like, now more people are starting to say, hey, I should buy HBAR. It's at 24, but it's not 5. Or it's 5 times the price that we were buying it for in that whole cycle part. Now, if you sold out and want to reinvest it, that's different than just rebuying for the first time. You're using capital that was made off of this token to buy even more capital in the token, which means you're going to make even more as it goes up. But if you're just buying right now, you got to wait to 50 cents for a 1x. You know, it's not apples to apples in all situations. That's why I hate when somebody says, I don't want to sell when I bought it, you know, for example, 50 cents on something and it goes to $5. Because then when I buy in at $1.50 or $2, my average is higher. How absurd are we? No, I would argue that your average is lower now than your 50 cents. You bought it at 50, sold it at 5, and rebought it at 2. In my math, your average is probably somewhere around 25 cents now. You just fucking majestified the system. Legitimately got way more tokens now along the process as well. Because now, you know, you majestically... You might even have a 20 cent average. Like, that's what I mean. Like, it's all about perception. Somebody's buy today is not somebody's situation that they've built up. Somebody coming into crypto today, buying an asset at 310 is not the same as somebody buying from 50 cents, selling it at 360 and rebuying it at 285. It's not. You can say that person has a $2.85 average, but they've played the system better than you could have ever thought possible. Not only did they sell out the bull market and buy back in that same cycle, but they were able to exponentially increase their holdings if that was the plan. You know, so there's so many different ways to look at this cycle-wise. So it's a psychological warfare. They tell you that this is bad because you don't have this or that. I don't believe that anymore. I used to. I can't buy this because of my average, or I can't sell and take my profit because my average is ruined. No, it's not. It is not ruined. If you know, or if you're a trader who does something and you start buying different rotations, and then you're like, hey, you know, I was riding this, XLM got to 60 cents. I've been in it since 10 cents. I feel there's going to be a retracement and I'm going to buy the big drop. And then it went back into the 20, 25, 30 cent range and you buy it and now you're back at 42. Oh, you should be gloating. You should be gloating because now that 10,000 tokens probably turned into 20 on the same money that you initially invested in. And another flex would be you probably could take out your initial investment as well and still make that happen. So, you know, I see it all the time everywhere. Everywhere. Everybody's gloating about the bottom line. The bottom line isn't even the bottom line. I could be down $5,000 a day, sell it every time it hits the bottom, right? And then just rebuy in the funds I have left. And then eventually when it reverses, I can show a 50% gain. But I don't have to show that 20% down here, 15% down here, 10% down. And that's what happens all across the board. I see it in influencers all the time. And it's very easy because then they add back to their portfolio and you see a straight line up. That's them adding money into the portfolio by themselves. Anybody can do that. You could do that on your own portfolio and make it look like you've made thousands of percent. Oh, you don't believe me? Go on it. Put $1,000 on there and make some money. Take $900 of it off and see how much it tells you made. It's going to make it look like you made thousands of percent because the only thing left in there is all the profit. You've taken out all your own capital. Don't get psyoped by the psyop. Crypto Plumber, welcome in and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 3+ months with the XP Meteor. Miss G Scott, welcome in, and yes, you do have to prove you're human. Unfortunately, it's a pain in the butt because of all the people that try to spam a beautiful audience of ours. But a lot of people like to have what they can't get. And they can't get it because they don't have the wisdom. They don't have the wisdom because they don't put the time in. You know, if these spammers put just as much time as they do spamming people into their own well-being and abundance for all, they'd be way farther off than the little bit of scam they pull on people. Their souls aren't cleansed. That's blood money. Blood money always has a payment at the end. And their payment's their soul. They're corrupted. If they're willing to pay and steal from a hardworking person, there's nothing they won't do. Remember that. Let's see. Frankie Fresh, welcome in and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 6 months with the XP Predictor. And Janine, I hope you're watching too. I really, really do. I was trying to speak the message today about certain things because I see a lot of people that do fall, and I've done the same thing. I've fallen into the psychological traps. You know, I've let my mind get played by the psyops that I see. But at least now I have some kind of formal understanding to where, you know, we can be on the lookout for the same things and then we can grow. Mistakes are good. No, I've never seen a person learn without making mistakes or get better at something without thinking they knew it all and then screwing it up and then having to rework even harder to make it better. That's what I want. That's the kind of person I want in my corner. I want the mistake makers because that means if you're not a mistake maker and you're afraid to make mistakes, that means you probably don't have a drive to do anything greater than you already are. Which means maybe you're working in a grocery store. Maybe you're just doing that 9-to-5 job that's safe. It's safe. Well, being safe, you know, will keep you from making a mistake too, and that mistake might change everything. Mistakes are good. Acknowledging our mistakes and learning from them are just absolutely needed. Anyhow, let me get off of that. Syrian, welcome in and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 1 year now with the I Told You So badge and being a very trusted mod in here and also in the Telegram. Thank you so much for going above and beyond. Let's see. Shane, welcome in and thank you for now being in Tom's Army for your second month with the Dusty's Outhouse Crypto News. How honored am I that you continued for a second month? A very influential part in our Telegram. Gives a lot of knowledge on a lot of different things. It's excellent. He's definitely been finding his stride in there. I love it. Nunya, welcome in and thanks for being in Tom's Army for your first month with the emoji badge and me being abducted by aliens. I have Gal. I've been hoping you'd TA it. I've spoken about it in the past that I was going to buy it when it hit certain areas, but it never hit them. And then I wanted the back testing, and I seen it here, and it was very tempting when it first came down here. I wanted to wait for some kind of structure, but then when it did this, And then it was building this micro. I said, if it does try to even put the illusion that it's building this, I'm buying it. And then it fell through the line. So I hesitated for a split second on this wick. And then it did some weird stuff. And then it came back down. And then as this started pulling up, it was somewhere around 162. I just said, fuck it. And then if it comes back down, because this is a bear flag, if that's how it plays, well, I know with the structure of breach, you know, it's going to come back to 107. So, I mean, that's in the back of my head if that happens. But, you know, sometimes you just got to take the shot. And then you got to keep an interest in it. You don't just take a shot for the micro, you take a shot for the macro. If you're trying to take a shot for the micro in crypto, you're probably going to get crushed. Can we take a peek at XRP? Also, DAG has been front running, and I believe it is now. Interesting. Yeah, XRP Healthcare right now is up about 1.7%, back up over 6 cents. Could very well be forming this reversal here, but we won't know until we get some kind of validation. Right now, we have to get over 6.66, so we have to get over the devil. The devil's horns right now, and once we get over it, we're going to be off to the promised land eventually here. Nobody knows when, nobody knows how, nobody knows the timing. And nobody knows if it breaks down and has to reset. You know, that's the variable in crypto. Nobody knows. It's a risk asset. There's nothing for us to go off of. There's no earnings, there's no nothing, there's no dividends. So I mean, that 666 is the best I can say. Like I'm not even, there's no real TA I can do until it breaks above that or ends up breaking out of this pattern. Because right now, the worst thing I do sometimes is look at things that are very volatile and keep looking over and over, and I just can't do it. That's why I stay away from certain ones talking about them every day. Because I know that they're very volatile tokens. DAG may have been a front runner, but man, that was one hell of a pull down. %22.22% pull down. Interesting. This could be the start, though. It's back testing the move right now. You never know. That was a very overzealous push out, though. I'll give you that. I will give you that. But that's just back testing this move. This could be spectacular if it doesn't make a new low here. If it doesn't invalidate this candle and fall below this 3.3, I would like it to stay up here. If this holds, it's got a whole day here where it could actually melt its way back up before the daily close. There could be a strategic opportunity there. Now, if it falls below that section, I'm going to put this on here. I'll be curious to see what it does. If it falls below this section, did it do that on all of them? Yep. That's interesting. We'll see. Because if it holds this, that definitely could be an outlier. Just like Epic. Epic could be an outlier here too. Look at that. That's a majestic. Oh man, that was so perfect. I hate drawing things out and not paying attention to it because I cover so much shit. But that's how it goes. At least the opportunity's sitting there for anybody who's paying attention. I think Axlar will probably do something similar when it's ready. You know, it's just, do we drop down first? Or can we finally pull out of this mess and have one of these kickouts? We almost had a nice kick out when we went to 64, but it immediately ate it back up. It was early. It was early. I don't know, because if the market does pull down here, you can see how it would be a bit of a disaster. You know, as far as for some. But it's all about a plan. You gotta have a plan. Plan. If there's no plan right now, like you gotta tell yourself, are you coming in for macro or are you coming in for micro? Are you coming in for alt season or are you coming in for instant gratification? This is not the market, I don't think, for instant gratification. But when it happens, it's gonna certainly feel instant because of how fast it goes. I'm not really seeing anything do anything. The one thing that I do like is seeing BAN push out of that death cross in the 4 hourly. That's a big sign. Keeping intact the inverse head and shoulders. That's a big sign. And then there's also, and even this whole thing is setting up as a rounding of the bottom as well. So If this does not go down and this is where it ended up going, adding where we did would be that would have been an unbelievable addition on that back test. So, but we'll see. It's a front runner for sure, like a couple of the others. But does it pull all the way back? Is this newfound support and push warranted? Can we get over the resistance here? These are all questions we're going to ask ourselves. 77 and ultimately over 80 cents, and we are going to cook here. And that would be cooking a little bit from where it's at. But, I mean, we want to cook all the way back up to almost $1 and retest that area for the first time. You know, since we were back here in February. So, because we never actually got, I don't think we hit $1 here. No, 98, 99 cents. So I want to start cooking back in the up direction. We're basically at the bottom portion of this pattern. And eventually we're not going to be at the bottom portion anymore. Eventually we're going to be, you know, up in here. We'll be back up in here. I don't know where it's going to finally happen. The apex of this pushes us out a little bit farther. But we can certainly trim this because this is farther down than it should be. If you're just looking at it from the uptrend standpoint. Something like that is probably more warranted. So, I mean, it shows you how close we were to the floor. Now, a drop out, you know, you could fall back down into that area. But the more I look at these, the more I feel like these could have been the overzealous drop areas, because I'm trying to get like a baseline here so that it's either you come down here and you go to the farther part, but that wouldn't even make sense because initially we bounced back out and rounded here a little bit. So that's why I put some credence into that wick right there. This wick right here, how it came all the way up, came down and bounced and then threw it out. It still bounced here. So then when you come down, it gives credence to something like this, how it bounced up and then came through a couple times. And now it's trying to decide if it's... I think that is a better way to look at this pattern than I looked at it before. And I like looking at it in the daily sometimes, because sometimes I see stuff like that and I'm like, you know what? That wick is like that for a reason. It gave it viability. It also lowers our target a little bit on a breakout, but that's okay. Because it's not going to be as wide, and that's what I want. I don't want it to be as wide if it's not meant to be, because then you have a different target. I'd rather go shorter on the target potential than too far. Because then you're always holding on to something that can't possibly happen because you're out of line. So, I mean, it's foresight here. You're playing this pattern being towards the bottom of its formation to try to play that push to $4 in the immediate short term. You know, if it breaks out, and maybe not the immediate short term, but as it breaks out of this pattern. And then eventually when it does that, you're going to be playing it all the way back up to the cup, and that gets you back up to 10. But this is going to take time and patience, dedication, investment over time. You know, there's going to have to be and this is a perfect spot because it comes back up towards this initial cup. But that's not even the grand part you're playing for. Like, this one actually plays up much higher. If we can start to do what we did in the past, which we should. We absolutely should. I mean, you're talking about capabilities. There's a lot of capabilities here. So this is another one where I look at and I'm like, would I buy Band? Now it's up 9%. So yesterday would have been a better day. But am I buying Band or am I buying XRP? Do I think XRP? So at this point, it's all about perspective, because at the point when we were all very interested in buying XRP at the bottom, we were under the impression that the other ones were over exaggerated and they were going to have to correct anyhow. So it was a perfect storm. I also have Matic, as you know, from the other day, on the pull down when it created the V. So I've definitely expanded a little bit. Whether it is the right decision or not, I don't know. I'm playing these longer patterns, and we'll see what happens. Micro looks interesting. Macro looks fantastic. Either way, I'm all for it. I'm all for it, because every time we get a drop there, you look at a token that you've been paying attention to, you got even more opportunity to try to diversify a little bit more. Or maybe you look at something here and you're like, hey, I really want to own this, but if we did get this little bit of a drop off, I could certainly. Some said that remember with Epic, missed it, and I said the same thing, and then I missed it again because I wasn't paying attention, of course. But the back test, we talked about this initially, this area, and then it bounced out and then got a gift to come back down here. Now, is this going to play out and finally break out? That's the other question. We don't know if this is a relief style push or if this is something to be, pushing out to. But I'll tell you this, we're going to at least make sure we know all of the optics here. That's for sure. We're going to know we know all the optics, because then no matter what happens, we're going to know. We're going to know once it takes the certain setting or certain move. We're going to know, oh, well, it went for consolidation to the next leg, or we invalidated that next drop and now we're cooking. And then we're going to go to boom, boom, boom. But that's basically what I got, everybody. Some Crypto Cuda said, I wish I still had my 10,000 XLM, but I'm happy with my XDC. I mean, be confident in what you're doing. There's, in my opinion, probably, I can't say 100%, but there's more potential in XDC where it's at price-wise compared to XLM. But at the same time, I guess we never really do quite know. But I like that. At the levels they're at, I would too prefer XDC over XLM. Even though I loved XLM at 8 to 10 cent range. Loved it. But yeah, I'm going to go because Julie's doing her thing with T and I want to make sure everything's going good. You heard he was a little emotional earlier. So just want to make sure everything's going good. May or may not have a live tonight. It just all depends how it goes in the house. So don't get too overzealous here. Don't get too overzealous, but also listen to what somebody like Parker Hildebrand just said. That is such great advice. Seriously. Says XRP, XLM, HBAR, Algo are my long-term bags I add when we go down to get my investment back out. Brilliant. Has a bag that he wanted, but every time it dips down before it eventually goes out, he probably has his own set markers. He buys it, and then he knows in the future those will be extra tokens if and when it does what he thinks it's going to do, because that's why he invested in it after all, right? He'll be able to sell some of it and not affect his actual bag. He's just adding to it for future opportunity. That's a great idea. It's a great idea, Parker. It's exactly what I did with XRP in the 24. We got that chance at 38. It's brilliant. Smart idea. All the world states, thanks for being in Tom's Army for your first month with the emoji badge and me being abducted by aliens, and says, I appreciate you very much for bringing attention to Epic Chain. You're welcome. I always say sometimes I bring attention to it and I still miss it myself because I'm doing so many different things on here. This is a perfect example. Even to draw it out in advance so far and to know that if it came down there, that was a good buy. At least in the micro, it was a good buy. I mean, that's where... So pending court approval of the settlement is a key milestone for XRP, with supporters believing it will boost interest from institutional... I think that's a played out narrative, because it doesn't matter. Institutional investors and financial firms aren't buying it on the exchange anyhow. We already know this. They're not buying it for $3.10. So I find it hard to believe that that's what's going to drive the price. See, that's where I vary from a lot of people who watch. I don't believe that that's going to happen. I believe that we already got a gift with the redactions where it didn't show us the price, but it showed that there was two separate pricing points and two separate ways of purchase between retail and the institutions and financial firms. We already knew this. Why do you think there's an escrow account with Ripple? Case in point. Have a good day, everybody. Be blessed. Think about it a little bit deeper. Just think about that a little bit.